So this is your reference image. I've loaded it in the front view, and we're going to start modeling this with a plane. I'm going to put the orientation to -z. We only need one segment. Let's make this editable, and I'm going to use axis center to move the axis to the bottom of this plane. I'm going to move it to about here, and I'm going to scale it down to here, and I'm also going to scale it in the y-axis to about here. And let's rotate this a little bit. I'll make this -40 degrees, and we need to move this top edge back into position just below that window here. So let's go to edge mode. I'm going to select this edge, and we can move it along the y-axis here. If I switch to my 4 viewports, you can see if I move the edge, I can move it along the normal. So I'm going to move it into place about here. And this window has two symmetries. One is pretty obvious, it's the big arch here, but these windows here also are symmetrical. And in fact, if you take a closer look, this arch here basically is just a partial of that bigger arch. So if you continue this arch, you will get the outer frame of the window. Unfortunately, knowing this is not going to be very helpful in this particular case, because joining these two arches is a little bit tricky. But we can still use the geometry that we create for this big arch to add these smaller arches here. Because we have these two symmetries, one for the entire window and one for the smaller windows, I'm going to select these two edges here, and I'm going to use connect points edges twice. So this will give me an edge right here at the center and one at the center of each of these windows. And we can now scale these points down to about here, and select these edges, connect them, and then scale these 2 points down. And I'm going to make the angle a little bit steeper than it is in the reference image. We're still going to have issues with the Phong shading later on, but this should help to alleviate that a little bit. So it's not exactly like in the reference image, but it's going to help to make the model look a little bit better. So before I continue creating the outer frame, I'm going to delete all of these points here, and I'm going to move the object axis and snap it to here. And also I'm going to reset the object axis to 0. And now we can use a symmetry object and make this editable. Just going to connect objects and delete to turn this into a single object. And now let's go to edge mode. Going to select these bottom edges and extrude them straight down. Then I'm going to move this point over to here. I think I'll bring that Phong angle down to 33 degrees. So what we can do now is we can select these edges here and these two and extrude them up, scale them down to 0, and you can see we do have an issue with the Phong shading because the angle is still too flat. I'm going to select these edges and just break the Phong shading. I'm also going to do this for these edges here. Okay. I'm also going to switch on ambient occlusion and cell renderer And for the cell renderer, I'm going to use color and edges. So getting this wireframe look if we render this. So let's select these edges and move them up to where the arch actually starts, which is about here. And I'm going to use the line cut tool, switch off visible only, make a cut somewhere here, then select these polygons and split them off. And for this new object, I'm going to move the object axis using snapping. I'm going to snap it to this point back here. Now we can snap this object to the top of the other object. I'm going to scale this up a little bit to maybe about here. Let's go to edge mode, ring select these edges. I'm going to use edge cut, and let's give it a couple of segments. I'll do 20. And I'm going to add a bend deformer as a child. So let's bend this over. Maybe a little bit further. And I'll bend it so this point here touches the center of the grid. So something like this. Now we can use current state to object to convert this. I'm going to keep this as a backup. And what I'll do now is I'll use the line cut tool again. I'm going to snap it to this point and just make a cut straight up to here. Let's delete these points. I'm also going to optimize the object. And we have these triangles up here. We could keep them, but I'm going to remove them by making two cuts, one from this point down to here and one from this point down to here. And now we can select these edges and dissolve them. And now the geometry is a little bit uneven. So what I'll do is I'll select these edges and use a script from the HB modeling bundle that I'm using in almost all of my videos, I think. And this script is called even distribution. And if I use that, I have it mapped to a shortcut. I can even out the spacing between these edges. So I'm going to do this for all of these edges. And this is how I create evenly distributed geometry. And we also have a problem with the Phong shading up here, so I'm going to select these edges here and break the Phong shading. So now comes the tricky part. We're going to use this object here to create this arch here, and we're going to join these two objects. So first of all, I'm going to make a copy of this one. Maybe let's switch the other one off. And what I'll do is I'll make a cut from the center point of this windowsill straight up. So let's grab the line cut tool, snap it to this point, and make a cut straight up to here. And then I'm going to delete all of these points. And I'm not going to worry about these triangles for now. Now we need to mirror this over. We could use the symmetry object and then just delete this half of the object. We could also go to model mode, and first of all, let's move the object axis to this point, and then we can switch this drop down here from size to scale and scale it to -1 on the x-axis, and this will mirror this object over. Let's switch this back to size. Now one thing that happens when you do that is that the normals get reversed. So if I select these polygons, you can see they're facing the wrong direction. So I'm just going to reverse the normals. And for now I'm also going to get rid of all of the edges here. So I'm just going to delete those. Okay, so now let's switch on our other object. And I'm also going to make a cut here. So same as before, I'm going to cut from the center point down here. Actually, we just need to cut to this edge here. This is where the two arches are joined. And I'm also going to make a cut from this point here over to where the back of the window is. And then I'm going to delete all of these points here and this polygon. Okay, so now we can select both of these objects and use connect objects and delete. I'm going to deselect everything and optimize, and I'm going to use the polygon pen tool to weld these 2 points and these 2 points, and this creates a couple of n-gons. We're going to take care of those in a second. And I'm also going to use the polygon pen to create polygons in between here. And let's go ahead and weld these 2 points and dissolve this edge. And in order to get rid of these n-gons here, what I'll do is I'll just use the line cut tool, and I'm going to make a cut here and another one here. And I'll continue this, if I can, down to here. And again, I'm going to use the even distribution script to even out the geometry a little bit. And let's do the same thing over here. So that's not looking too bad. Now we need to take care of this part of the object here. Let's go ahead and select these edges. And I'm just going to extrude them over to about here, and I'm going to move them back and snap them to the edges here at the back. Now we can use the polygon pen to create this polygon in between here. And over here I think I'm going to move this point over to 0 on the x-axis. Let's go to model mode and move the axis to the center. And then I can move this point over to 0 on the x-axis, and I'm going to make a cut from this point straight up. Delete these points. Okay, that's looking good. So over here, I think what I'll do is I'll just connect this edge, and then I'm going to connect these 2 points, dissolve this edge, and use the HB modeling bundle script to even out the geometry again. So we still have this triangle here, and we have another one down here, and we have this one. So let's see, what can we do? Well, one thing we can do is select these edges and connect them, and then connect these 2 points, dissolve this edge, and we still have an n-gon here, so I'm going to make a cut like this, and again I'm going to use the HB modeling bundle script, even distribution, to even out the geometry. And in order to get rid of these other 2 triangles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these edges. But before I do that, I need to change something here. If I rotate the camera like this, you can see we have a non-planar polygon here. So that means that one or more points are not in the same plane as the others, and that is a bad thing. So I'm going to select this point and just move it over. Until it's planar again. So let's just check if I screwed up this one, and I did. So that's not perfect, but it's a little better than it was before. Okay, almost perfect. So now I'm going to select these edges here all the way down to this one and connect them, and then I can use the slide tool to slide this point up so we get a diamond shaped quad down here, and if I slide this point down a bit, we get a diamond shaped quad up here. So let's see how that looks. So I'm just going to check whether all of these points here are still at the center. We need to adjust the position a little bit by zeroing these points out on the x-axis, and now we should be able to use symmetry and get our completed arch. So before I use the symmetry though, I'm going to combine these 2 objects. optimize. We can get rid of these edges here by dissolving them, and let's dissolve these edges. And also I want to make sure that these points here got welded, and it looks like they did. Okay, cool. So I'm going to select these edges here again and break the Fong shading. Let's go ahead and select these edges and extrude them back a bit. I'm also going to extrude these edges back. And now we can use Symmetry. Oh, apparently not. First of all, we have to change the object axis back to 0 on the x-axis. And there you have your nice little arched window.